Well, hi folks, and welcome to the next video in the Knights Templar series, number 2. It's called The Formation of the Brotherhood. Now, we'll just have a little recap to start with about from the first episode, which was the conspirators, okay? So what we said here is we had a little stage and we started bringing our conspirators onto the stage. We started off with Guillaume de Tyre, who was the chronicler, and also Fulcher of Chartres, who was also a historian. We looked at Bernard of Clave, which was a very important aspect of the whole story. And then Hugh I, the Count of Champagne. We looked at the Council of Troyes, and then we brought it all together. We brought the whole Rex Days families onto the stage, who we said were the priests going back to Solomon's Temple. Okay, so now moving on, it might be good to just have a look at a little bit of the timelines involved in the Solomon's Temple, just to give ourselves just that little bit more background information before we move on to the formation of the actual Knights Templars themselves, okay? So we're looking at Jerusalem, and we're looking at a hill called Moriah Hill, okay? Now this is where the first temple was built, and it was built in 960 BC as a foundation place for the Israelite nation, to be a spiritual centre for them, and to be a place where they kept all their religious artifacts, particularly the Ark of the Covenant, and all the secrets and everything related to the Israelite nation. And then unfortunately, in 568 BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar razed the whole temple to the ground, okay. I've got a little reading here, a Bible reading, that speaks of it. It's 2 Kings 25, and it speaks as Nebuchadnezzar attacked Jerusalem again, and under the leadership of his captain of the guard, who burned the temple in 586-587 BCE, along with the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house. The city was broken down, and the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon, with the remnants of the multitude were carried away. So that must have been an awful time over in Jerusalem. So over to the second temple. Now the second temple was the Herod's temple. It began in 535 BC and eventually was finished construction in 516 BC. Now that lasted until the 4th of August 70 AD, when it was finally, that temple was razed to the ground by Titus during a Roman siege. Now, this was a time in AD 66 where there was the Jewish revolt against the Roman invaders in Jerusalem. So, and it was at this time that a huge, a very long siege was set on the Temple Mount. So the priests were still in there. So before the temple was actually invaded, during the siege, the priests had a long time to hide anything that they didn't want to be discovered. Basically, all the Israelite artifacts, the Ark of the Covenant, and all the secrets and all that sort of thing. So they had plenty of time to hide it. Now, so that's the background. That's pretty much all the background we need to be able to move on now to say, well, okay, what happened to the Templars? Where did they come from? What is their background? So we can still use William of de Tyre's information. Okay, it's not defunct, but it's there as a background, and also the information of Fulcher of Chartres. They can be our backbone. Okay. Now, de Tyre said that in 1118, 9 pretty much unheard of monks had become knights, they arrived in Jerusalem, presented themselves to King Baldwin, and King Baldwin, for some reason, then said, "Okay, here's a whole area for you to live in my palace." And from there, their job was to protect the Holy Land from or any pilgrims being mugged and basically captured on the way to Jerusalem. And he said that these knights were there, and there was 9 of them, and he said there remained 9 of them for 9 years. Okay. Now, the writers of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, Bacon, Lee, and Lincoln, found a letter in Recueil de Historien de Crusade, or the Crusade research document. Now, this was the most important document of the Crusades that we know of. So it's important. It's an important reference. Now, this was a letter from the Bishop of Chartres to the Count of Champagne. And he said that we have heard that before leaving Jerusalem, you made a vow to join La Malice de Christ, and that you wish to enroll in this evangelical soldiery. Okay. Now, the bishop referred there to the Knights Templar, but this was in 1114. Okay, so that's 4 years before William de Tyre said the order was founded. So basically, you're looking at 4 or 5, could have been 4 or 5, many years before. So there was something in the background that became the Templars that we know. So the dates are a bit like that, really, aren't they? The bishop also died in 1115. Okay, so you've got to ask yourself, how could the bishop write a letter about an organisation that wasn't formed until 3 years after his death? So, you know. Another aspect as well was came from a discovery in an archive in a temple in Saborga, and that's in northern Italy. Okay. Now, this document was talked about Bernard of Clairvaux founding an abbey in that town to hide a great secret, and he was supposed to have done that in 1113. So what was that great secret? It's all a bit... and when he formed the temple, he installed 2 monks, one called Godimer and one called Russell. Now, it said that Bernard blessed these 2 monks together with 7 other knights. Okay, 7, and that was actually in 1118. And these knights then went off to the Holy Land. So the knights are the same knights as we know as the first Knights Templar. That's Hugh de Payens, André de Montbard, Hugh the first Count of Champagne, Payen de Montdidier, Geoffrey de Saint-Omer, Archimond de Saint-Amand, Geoffrey Bissell, and they all went off to the Holy Land. But before they went, Hugh de Payens was initiated as the first Grand Master of the Poor Militia of Christ, and this was in 1117, and that was done by the Abbot of Saborga, under the instruction of Bernard of Clairvaux. So the plot, as they say, thickens. And our beginning date for the Knights Templars is therefore, it's pretty uncertain, isn't it? But we've got a kind of an idea of what happened there. But what is clear, after what we've found so far, is that there was an organisation of like-minded people, and probably interrelated people, or family units as well, that were behind all these scenes. They seem to structure all the events that led to the beginning of the Templars and the Cistercian order, and they seem to be connected at a very core level. Okay. Anyway, Hugh de Champagne. Okay, back to Hugh. He returned to the Holy Land, from the Holy Land back to his own court in Troyes, and immediately he granted the lands in the Val d'Absinthe to Bernard of Clairvaux to build the Clairvaux Abbey. So why? Why did he suddenly do that, having been away in the Holy Land for 4 years? He came back, granted the land for the Abbey. Now Mchugh returned then back to the Temple Mount after he'd done this. This was in 1124, and when he got back, he then was initiating himself into the Knights Templar. So if he was initiated in 1124, this again puts the idea that William de Tyre's idea that there was only 9 knights for 9 years. That's obviously wrong, because when Hugh I Champagne joined in 1127, that made it 10. So we've got the knights, haven't we? They're over there. King Baldwin has said, you can have this wonderful suite as part of my palace to yourselves. And it just happened that that palace was right above the remains of the old Solomon's Temple. So so they were there in position right above where the early priests buried the treasure and hid the secrets. So we've got the Cullen priests of the temple. Their role as the Cullen priests were to protect, as we've said, the holy relics and the secrets. Dating back, we're looking here again, as we said earlier, to the Rex Deus families, and we're saying they are the descendants of the priests of the Solomon's Temple, and they are the same people as the Knights Templar. So we're saying that they dated back pretty much through Egypt, because remember we looked in the book by Tim Wallace Murphy, who managed to follow them back to Egypt, and people are saying they go back as far as Samaria. So you got a long lineage there. So all the treasure is buried underneath the area, underneath the palace that they're actually occupying now. And the only people that would have known about this were the Rex Deus families, weren't they? Because if they were their descendant from the priests, they would have been the people that knew about it. So what did they do? Well, they were there in the temple. What did they do? Well, there's a lot of evidence that says that what they did was they dug down. Basically, where it must have been to uncover the treasure that they knew was sitting down there waiting to be discovered. Now, evidence comes from, it's a good piece of evidence, from excavations that actually happened in 1867. Okay, and this was Sir Charles Wilson. He was of the Royal Engineers, but he'd also been the head of the Metropolitan Police during the Jack the Ripper investigations. And he found that there was through the solid rock, shafts had been dug down, and there was one particular 80 feet deep shaft right down through the bedrock, and many other tunnels have been dug again through the bedrock off in different directions. So he said there was nothing much to find there except for Templar relics. So the Templars had obviously been down there. They found a Templar spear, they found a lance and a full Templar broadsword, and various other little bits that the Templars had left. So they had been down in those caves, in those underground tunnels. So anyway, after the digging expedition, the Templars returned back to France in 1128, and this is when we had the Council of Troyes, which of course we went through big detail in the last episode, and we said that it was run by the Count of Champagne in his court, by Bernard of Clairvaux, and this is then where they received their holy rule. So they become an official organisation as part of the Roman Church. And then they were pretty much allowed to do what they wanted under those circumstances, and they didn't have to bother paying taxes or tithes or anything like that. And it's from this point on that the Templars suddenly began to grow massively. So whatever they'd done, whatever they'd found, affected things in a big way, and they grew out of all potential. And they grew mainly from the ranks of the nobility, because usually one of the youngest sons would join the Knights Templar, and he would give all his lands, everything he owned, to the Templars, and all he kept was his sword and his Bible. So the Templars ended up getting vast amounts of land. They got riches, and they became the most rich organisation, the most powerful organisation on the planet. They had lands in Provence, Champagne, England, Tuscany, Aragon, Galicia, Portugal, Scotland, Normandy, the Holy Land, and Aquitaine. Now, Aquitaine is the south of France, which is now the Cathar country. And it was there that they held 30% of their property and their lands outside the Holy Land. And it was here where they were going to start have their own homeland. Reference again to my book, which is basically covers all this in detail, and it's all about the Cathar country, and this is what this series is based on. If you want to copy, there's a link down below in the description. So the Templars are now huge. They've got holdings now from the Baltic to the Mediterranean and the Atlantic to the Holy Land. This was a massive organisation. They had all sorts of businesses that had been left to them. They had mills, they had farms, barns, chapels, commanderies. The Templars built the first multinational conglomeration in the whole of the world. They had vast business interests, including wine, olive oil production, mining, coal mine and minerals, glass production, wool and cloth. They had metal smelting, lumber, and of course banking and travel. And through their fleet of ships, they had a massive fleet of ships, they had export and import business, and they could export and import all of these products that they were building and producing. They also employed, of course, masses of local people, and they had tenant farms throughout their lands. And of course, the tenant farms would pay 10% tithe, so the very Knights Templar would be made immune to tithes and taxes through a papal bull. So nothing really changes, does it? Anyway, the banking and touring and travel industry, as part of this, they introduced the first traveller's cheque, or even credit card. And the idea was that for people to travel safely to the Holy Land with the Knights Templar, they would go to their local commandery. They would put up money over, and they would be given a chit. It's like a prepaid credit card, really. And they went off on the journey, and they would use this to pay their bills, and they would pay for any to withdraw cash, anything they needed throughout the journey would be paid for on this chit. And then when they came home, they would go back to the commandery, they would cash in their chit or top up the amount that was left, and of course this is all done at interest. So the Knights Templars could lose, couldn't they? So basically what you're saying here is the Knights Templar had the first European central bank, and that was in the 12th and the 13th century. So make of that what you will. So they lent money, interest to anybody. Now this was of course including kings and important people, and they actually saved Louis VII from financial ruin. So they saved him from bankruptcy. And then they would do retirement pensions and annuities in exchange for properties, something which I think is going to be big over the next couple of years from now. But through this, they managed to get a vast property portfolio. Watch for this. They also had the massive fleet of ships, and which we've already said, and that enabled to do their overseas trade of imports and exports. Now these were mainly based in La Rochelle on the west coast of France. There was a big port there where the Knights Templar would keep their ships. This is 300 miles from Paris, 300 miles from the Languedoc, and with easy access across to England, to the British Isles. They had also had quite a few warships. Now, the Templars took part in the first acts that I know of privateering. Privateering to me is just legalised piracy. So they were kind of slipping off the end a little bit already by this point. But by the end of the 13th century, they'd kind of reached the peak of their of an unheard of amount of wealth. They were more powerful than kings, they were more powerful than countries, and they were more powerful than the church. So obviously by this point, you're going to be attracting enemies. And it was within these banking activities that was the seeds of their downfall. King Philip le Bel of France was in absolute serious debt to the Templars. So it was with him and Pope Clement V that their end was in sight. Because it was these two powerful people that moved against them. We'll go further into this, what happened from there in the next video. But please do click on subscribe. I'm trying to build this my YouTube channel up now, because obviously it's very difficult to plan any megalithic tours because of what's happening. So this has become my full-time job, but I'm trying to build it up. If you look in the description below, there's a PayPal link you can click on if you fancy making a donation, either a monthly or a one-off donation to help me along doing this. There's also a whole load of books you can click on to buy the books. I get a small commission, very small commission. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you all in the next video.